Welcome to Figure Feedback. My name is Jeremy, and this is the Flashforge Creator 5. And in this video, I've put together a list of pros and cons to owning and using this particular 3D printer. So don't consider this to be a full comprehensive review. It's really just some notes that I've decided to take down on the way to that full review that will come in the future. All right, so I've written everything down right here in my trusty notebook. So let's get started. So let's start off with something positive. The assembly. This printer is very easy to assemble, especially with it being a 4 tool head printer with the only other one that is in its category and within its price range being the Snapmaker U1. And when you compare the assembly process to the U1 compared to the the Creator 5 is much more streamlined. Flashforge took care of almost everything right out of the box, with the most complicated, or at least the most time-consuming thing would have been connecting the tool heads to all of the cables and then docking them and doing all that stuff. But that's already pre-assembled in the box. And the only thing that you have to do is take the entire module and just slide it down in its appropriate space and secure it with 2 screws. That's it. And it makes this assembly process nice and easy, and you can do it in 15 to 20 minutes. The screen is really easy to plug in. There are no ribbon cables. And just from that standpoint alone, I think Flashforge deserves a lot of credit for just making what could be a very nerve-wracking process dead simple to do. So it's a great first impression with this printer. Another pro is it's not heavy. So if the weight of 3D printers is something that you're concerned about, this printer is not really heavy. It comes in at around 30 pounds. I'm just using pounds because America, right? And compare that to the Snapmaker U1, which is around like 50 pounds. So this is a lighter printer. And then ergonomically, it's also a lot more practical and easier to carry. I'm not going to always compare this to the U1, but there are going to be some comparisons here and there because, like I said, they're like the only 2 of its kind currently in this particular category. But when it comes to lifting this thing, the Creator 5 has these slots underneath that act as handles. So you can grab it from underneath and you can lift it up. And one of the things about the Snapmaker U1 that I wish were different was that it was designed better so that you can actually lift it, because the sides are all smooth, there's no handles on it, and it's kind of hard to really get a confident grip on it when you want to move it around. It's got this hump on it that's like near the back that you can kind of put your hand under so you can have some balance if you kind of grab it like this, kind of like from this angle. But, just from that perspective, moving it around ergonomically, this straight up box shape, I think that it works out better. Did a couple of pros. Now let's go to some cons. I'm just going to sort of jump back and forth. So one of the cons is definitely the way that this printer purges. Is not the fact that it purges when you load up Filament, for example. It's the fact that Flashforge decided that it would be totally okay to just let the filament purge from the nozzle down onto the base of the printer. And it's just really weird because it's a pretty decent distance. So instead of getting the tight coiled filament balls that we're used to, we just get these long, thin strands of filament that just wind up on the floor that you have to just pull out. And they could have easily designed some sort of bucket to catch that waste, as some designers have already done, which I also have on my Creator 5, that you can just connect to the bottom of the bed with magnets. So the fact that they did not have something ready to go either in the box or at least a file that you can print that's already pre-installed on the printer to actually catch the waste so it won't have to be stringy and getting all the way to the base like that. was a pretty, silly oversight in my opinion. So even though that is fixable, I've seen at least three different Creator 5 purge bucket solutions since the printer has been released. So it's not a big deal at this point, but I do think that's something that the company themselves should have taken care of. Another con when it comes to filament, since we're talking about filament, is the sort of multi-step process that you have to go through when the filament runs out. So you're printing with one reel and you don't have the exact same color in another tool head, so it's not going to just automatically cycle over to that next filament to continue to print. When the filament uh, detection module senses that there's no more filament, it will pause the print. But what you have to do at that point is you have to squeeze the filament cutter on the tool head to cut the filament. Then you have to take the PTFE tube out of the tool head, and then you have to pull what's left of the filament out of the PTFE tube before you can put on another spool and put the PTFE tube back in there, feed the filament back through, and then run the loading process again. It's not a difficult process to do, but it does take more steps than you might be prepared to take. And the amount of filament that you have to essentially waste because of that is a little bit longer than I would prefer. I had it on me at some point, but it's been so long I don't have it anymore. But the amount of filament that you're going to waste is probably going to be about that long, so maybe not a huge deal. It's just something that I noticed. And when it did happen, I thought, okay, well, maybe this particular step some people might be a little turned off by it. So, but not a huge deal, but still something to point out. Let's go back to the Pro. Still talking about filament. It's the speed of manually loading and unloading the filament. You can kind of see where Flashforge has cut costs in order to keep this printer at the price that it is. It doesn't do automatic loading and it doesn't do automatic unloading or retraction. You have to manually load the filament by pushing it up the PTFE tube until it gets to the tool head. You squeeze the filament cutter, you push the filament even further down, and then you let the filament cutter handle go, and then the filament will just be locked in place. And then at that point, when you do the loading process, the filament would just be pulled into the hot end. But it does not retract itself. So when you want to unload the filament, you again manually cut the filament using the filament cutter, and then you just pull it out manually. And so while we're used to almost automatic everything on printers these days, what I do like about this particular method is that it's really fast to do. And the printer doesn't have to be on for you to do it. You don't have to wait for anything to heat up. You don't have to wait for the printer to go through any type of homing process before it can actually start any loading or unloading procedure. You can just do it whenever you want. And it's just quick and easy. And also, because the filament does not retract, you don't have to worry about any of those spring-loaded filament holders. Instead, they're just these regular static slotted in and screwed in holder that you can use a variety of different spool sizes on. So you can use just spools that have like a regular diameter, or if you're going to use like JO filament, which is known to have a wider diameter when it comes to the center of the filament reel, you can slap those on it. If you have the 250-gram sample spools of filament, like the little baby ones, those fit just fine on it. And with many other printers, especially ones that have some type of multi-material filament system, they're usually only dedicated for one particular type of filament spool of a certain diameter. And if you want to go in a different direction, you'll have to print some type of adapter in order for it to fit, or some type of cage to put around the filament, so then it'll be able to roll smoothly in like an AMS or an Ace 2 Pro or something like that. But with this, it doesn't matter. Whatever you got, you just slap it on and it will work. So it's low tech in that way, but it's convenient in other ways as well. Another pro is going to be the price, because the Creator 5 currently comes in at about $699 as opposed to the Snapmaker U1, which costs about $900. So there is some definite cost savings there. And yes, there are trade-offs, and some of those are going to be in the con section. But if you are more conscious about spending money and you don't have the $900 to spend, and this is definitely more in your budget, then that really helps to extend this printer to a wider market, more people who may be just more concerned with the price than anything else, so long as the printer, functions properly. Another pro definitely has got to be the print quality. This printer does put out some very nice looking prints. Compared to the Snapmaker U1, I think that the Snapmaker U1 does have a slight edge when it comes to print quality, but the Creator 5 doesn't make bad looking prints at all. I think most people, except for the ones who are the most nitpicky, will be happy with the type of results that they've gotten on this, if they already have it. And you can just take a look at some of the prints that I've made with this right now, and I think that they look completely fine. So you know that at least with this, you're getting some good print quality in the end. And that's always important. If not the, I think it's probably the most important thing about a printer. You want your stuff to look good and you want your pieces to fit together. Another pro is how easy it is to change the hot end. Now, again, this is in comparison to the Snapmaker U1, because changing the hot end on that printer is a different beast than this one. Now, on the Creator 5, the only thing that you have to do is you have to take out 2 screws that's on the tool head, and then you can just grab the whole hot end and just pull it down. You just pull it out and you stick another one back in there, and then you put the 2 screws back in, and then you're done. And you compare that to the Snapmaker U1, where you also have to remove some screws, but then you also have to fiddle around with this cable that's connected to the hot end, and then you have to reroute it, and it takes more time. It's a little bit more of a teardown. It's one of those things where the first time is it may not be a great experience, but then you understand what you're doing, and then subsequent times you can do it faster and you can do it faster. But just for what it is so much easier to get to the hot end and change it on the Creator 5. And I also like how they made it easy to get into the entire tool head assembly. There are a handful of screws that you have to remove, but when it comes to a process such as changing out the fan, if you ever need to change out the fan, that's really easy to do. Is that a spider? One moment. All right, so like I was saying, if you needed to change out the fan on the tool head, that's really easy to do. And if you needed to change out the filament cutter, that's also something that is easy to do. And Flashforge, thank goodness, were proactive in providing a lot of resources, including videos, to show you how to do a lot of the different maintenance and replacement steps that you may have to go through if you need to change something up on this printer, if you need to replace a part. They've already gone ahead and they made those resources available. And looking through them, a lot of them, they don't look too taxing, So kudos to them on making a machine that definitely appears to be easier to maintain. And then also, speaking of nozzles, you do get some hardened steel nozzles right out of the box. So that's great. They're all hardened steel. So if you got your PLA carbon fibers and your glow in the dark filaments and anything that's abrasive, you'll be able to immediately start printing those on the Creator 5. And you don't have to worry about having to get a different set of hot ends to accommodate that. So I've praised it, but now we definitely got to talk about some cons. And the first one I already talked about with the filament purging onto the floor, but there's mods available for that. So let's talk about the software. So the slicer for this, the official slicer for this that Flashforge has created, is called Flash Studio. It is a replacement to Orca Flashforge, which they are no longer going to be supported. They moved everything over to Flash Studio, which is still based on Orca Slicer, and it still looks exactly like Orca Flashforge looked. I mean, it's pretty much the same thing, just with some different tooling underneath the hood. And well, that's not a problem, but the problem is definitely the software in general. Flashforge has not been the best when it comes to software, whether it's firmware on the printer or when it comes to the firmware or the slicer software. And an example of that is when it comes to being connected online. If you choose to go through their cloud server in order to connect your printer to the slicer, to your computer so that you can do some remote monitoring and you can start prints remotely and you can monitor it with the camera that's built into this printer, those servers go up and down, and there's no rhyme or reason for it. One day you can just be up and running and everything will be fine, and then for the next day and a half your printer will be showing offline and you won't have any idea what's going on. You don't know what's happened. Did something update? Did I break something? Did they break something? Is there something wrong with the printer or whatever? And it's just Flashforge's servers not cooperating, and then out of the blue your printer will be back online again. So it's sort of always been that way, so it's not the most reliable thing in the world. You do have the option of turning on LAN mode to just bypass all of that so you can always be online, but when you through your local network. But when you do choose to do that, then you won't have the ability to use the Flash Studio mobile app that you might have on your phone or your tablet in order to monitor your prints and stop something if you need to stop it, and so on and so forth. Also on the software side, and they need to throw this in a firmware update as soon as possible, is that there is no object exclude on this printer. So if you're printing multiple different parts at the same time and one of them fails, you don't have the ability to just tell the printer, hey, skip that part and just continue printing the other ones. This is not a new feature for any printer. Their previous printers have it. The 5M series has it. The 85X has it. But for some reason on the Creator 5, it's not there yet. At least not as I record this video. So they really, really need to get that in. And really that should have been there from the very beginning. Now, the next part may not be a really big deal to you. It just kind of depends, but you should know what you're getting yourself into. And it's that this printer is not an open source printer. This is not the kind of printer that you can just do whatever the heck you want to do with it as far as altering the software. It does run Clipper, but you don't have direct access to it. And so you just can't get into the nitty gritty of the deep, dark, advanced settings if you want to. Now, I know that a lot of people don't care about such things. They just want their printer to work. They don't want to mess with those deep features. But I also know there's plenty of people out there that want to access it, and they're all about open source everything. Well, you're not going to get that with this printer, at least not officially. And don't be surprised about it, because the 5M series printers, they were the same way. The 85X is the exact same way. So nothing's changed from that perspective. So if you want something that is more open source and something you can screw around with, then you should just go for the Snapmaker U1, because it does let you do that kind of stuff. But the Flashforge printers do not. So if that's your thing, you know what you are in for from that perspective. There's also no kind of RFID support for this. Again, this is kind of like a cost saving measure that Flashforge has done. And I thought it was particularly, kind of odd, because Flashforge is a manufacturer of its own filament. And considering how other companies, whether it's Bamboo, Creality, Anycubic, Snapmaker, Cheaty, they all have this RFID tagging filament spools that can just relay the appropriate filament settings back to the slicer, once it's synced from the printer. But Flashforge doesn't have that, despite being a filament manufacturer in its own regard. So again, not a huge deal. There's still presets on the slicer. If you do buy Flashforge filaments, that would be the same thing that the RFID tags would propagate for you. But yeah, it's just not at that point as far as the modernization of multi-material 3D printing goes. So that's something that is not here with it. There's also no built-in AI detection features like failure detection and spaghetti detection, like that kind of thing. That's not built into this printer. Instead, it's been outsourced to this service called Obico. And that is this open source software that you can sign up for, and it just remotely monitors your prints, and using AI it will be able to detect if something like that has gone wrong and alert you to it. There are free and paid tiers to that particular service, and they give you a certain amount of hours each month for monitoring. But if you really, really wanted to be serious about it, and you've got long prints that take 10 hours plus, and you really want to make sure that nothing's going to go wrong, then you're going to have to pay them for the credits so that you can look at those, so that they can continue to monitor for hours and hours and hours on end. And depending on how many hours of monitoring you want, the price changes. So it can be a continuous cost for you if you want to continue monitoring prints in that way. And I really wish that that was just built into the printer so that you wouldn't have to outsource it to somewhere else and spend money for the same type of features on other printers, which are already built in. But yeah, anyway, that is it. That's my pros and cons list for the Flashforge Creator 5. I know that there were more cons on this list than there were pros, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad printer. I really do enjoy using it. I haven't encountered any crazy problems with it yet, but we'll see how that turns out over time. And that will be what the full review will be for at some point in the future. So if you got any other questions about this printer, let me know down in the comments, and I'll be sure to do my best to get back to you. Oh, and before I go, I have to say it again, just in case you did not hear the news. Anyone that you hear saying that this printer has been locked down to Flash Studio and you can't use any other slicer and all that other stuff, that's not true. It was never true with this printer. You always had the ability to use Flash Studio, and then there were builds for it in the dev nightly build of Orca Slicer, which is now turned into the an alpha release of Orca Slicer for its latest versions, and profiles for the Creator 5 and the Creator 5 Pro are in that alpha version. And then once the alpha version is done, eventually it'll make its way to being the stable release, and then it'll be in the stable release. So no, it is not locked down to Flash Studio. And no, there are no ads on the printer. There's no ads in this printer at all. So if you thought that there were, because that's what you heard someone say, they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, that's not a thing. There was a banner ad in the slicer for Meshy AI that appeared in one place on the devices page, and only if the device list was also selected on that page. That's where that one banner ad was, but lately it's just not there anymore. Don't know if Flashforge got the news and they were like, okay, we'll take it out. Don't know, but it's not there anymore. It could be back, but it ain't there now. Yeah, but that's it. Thank you all so much for watching. Till next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you soon.